mon Dieu les ramène en séjour vers toi. Rappelle-nous son précepte sacré. Son précepte sacré, ouvrons nos bras à l'enfant égaré. Si la rigueur et la vengeance mon Dieu les ramène en séjour vers toi. Que le pardon et la clémence, oh mon Dieu, les ramène vers toi. Mon Dieu, les ramène en séjour vers toi, en séjour vers toi, les ramène en séjour, mon Dieu, vers toi. Home, no more home to me, whither must I wander? Hunger, my driver, I go where I must. Cold blows the winter wind over hill and heather. Thick drives the rain, and my roof is in the dust. Loved of wise men was the shade of my roof tree. The true word of welcome was spoken in the door. Dear days of old, with the faces in the firelight, kind folks of old, you come again no more. Home was home then, my dear, full of kindly faces. Home was home then, my dear, happy for the child. Fire and the windows bright glittered on the moorland. Song, tuneful song, built a palace in the wild. Now when day dawns on the brow of the moorland, lone stands the house and the chimney stone. kind hearts, the true hearts that loved the place of old. Spring shall come again, calling up the moorfowl. Spring shall bring the sun and rain, bring the bees and flowers. Red shall the heather bloom over hill and valley. Soft flow the stream through the even flowing hours. Fair the day shine as it shone on my childhood. Fair shine the day on the house with open door. Birds come and cry there and twitter in the chimney, but I go forever and come again no more.
2, 3, 4, 5. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Nice. It's jumping a tiny bit, but that's.
But it doesn't sound broken up.
I did that a couple times. How about you talk about it? Sounds pretty good.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
You should be fine.
Cool.
Cool. Sweet. It's nice that it's empty. I hear ya. Cool. I changed out hard drives. Oh, I gave you a 19-second roll of that, so you should be good to go. It's a little bit bigger. This one can stay here. Okay. For tomorrow, that one back. So I'll give this one back to you. The other race. Either one. Oh, Tuesday would be great, but okay. Any questions? I'll just run by the office. What time does it close? There's a mailbox out in front, so you can stick it in there. Just let me know when you're on your way back. I will be there till probably 6:30. Oh, yeah. And sometimes I lock the door just so you're all that makes sense.
We're gonna be front row soon.
Oh, so it's two. Okay.
Front row.
But I think they started at 2. Okay, cool. So yeah.
Yeah, over the library.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. You can go ahead and go
Other
live.
part of the library?
The one by the clock tower.
On channel 11 if you would.
Well, maybe it's the clock tower.
And
So
then
I don't
people
know.
will know, especially if they thought
I gotta.
already. Cool.
Are you on the normal Seagate email mail? New World Dispatch Union. Was that one they asked for 100 here? I will guard your stuff.
Exciting.
Ought to be, yeah. Seagate's in on the list, unfortunately, it's 100 stuff.
AS4. What's AS4?
IBM, good friend.
Oh, I saw
What
that.
what that was on was. I do work with all the parents, and we have installation here, and it's really
Was it spelling the same? I mean, yeah.
They had Spillman, I think, for a couple of years when I got here.
Yeah, and I was trying to not really go down the rabbit hole on that this morning. But that was yesterday. Something that was like didn't even make minutes. It was like,
Yeah, I think one of the facts here is the difficulty of surviving.
nobody's ever, they've never been in a position where truly somebody has been accountable for those systems. Yeah.
You can declare yourself in session and in charge. Listen, Mary, I view and partners as a right there. Talked about getting control of smoking projects. Alex and I were talking about the need to do these upgrades and stuff in a long time.
And then have buy-in from everybody at the start of the process, so that people actually feel empowered rather than just dictating.
don't know if I want to volunteer that much.
Well, I'm volunteering all my kids. With the proper supervision and, Oh my God. Well, just there's so much construction trash on the road right now. Large sheets of visqueen.
Good afternoon. I'm John Lloyd, the Chief Technology Officer. This is Mary Lackner, the GIS Director Manager. And what we're here to talk about today is some of the inherent benefits of modernizing and hitting new technologies to solve old problems. There's no question about the utility of, in this particular case, the unmanned aerial systems, and there's no question about the cost effectiveness of that approach to collecting data and solving problems. We can talk about technology as we go, but I would turn over the policy discussion to John Peacock, start us off here and have that discussion.
I didn't know you were going to hand off to me so quickly, or maybe at all, John. But the reason we wanted to bring this forward to the board is, as technologies change and such, they always come with their own disruptions. And so in this case, GIS is looking as many, and BITS are looking as many organizations are, about the utility of using the unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as drones, for, I believe, mapping purposes, as well as I think just mapping purposes at this point. I'll let you go through what the uses would be. However, because there has been dialogue about application of these technologies just nationwide over the past few years, before we did make the investments that we have budgeted for, to implement these technologies, we just wanted to be sure that the board was aware that we were headed in this direction and that we are planning to employ these technologies. And so I think it'd be good, John, if you or Mary could kind of give an overview of how the technologies would be employed and what that might look like, and then we can answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay. Mary, all yours.
So UAS and drones have been utilized in GIS technology for 4 or 5 years. They're getting a lot more mainstream. I'm sure you are hearing a lot more about drones and data collection just in the regular media and the issues related around drones. But the opportunity for GIS and mapping and just being able to collect a lot of different data really opens a lot of opportunity for us. Because before, we can either collect data from the ground, or we can collect the data from hiring an aerial photo company or even satellite and buying imagery that way. But now we can actually put something up in the air under 400 feet above our ground and take photos, get a digital surface model, which would be like your elevation contour information. We can fly around a building and get a 3D model that you would not have to build from scratch, that you can get this from a drone. We can also fly to a place that's hard to get to and inspect an asset there. And the county has assets on top of mountaintops, so it might take several hours to hike to, or hire a helicopter to get to. If we're able to utilize a drone to get there and look and inspect remotely, that will save a lot of resources. There's also the whole realm that you've probably been familiar with, is from the real estate side of thing and promotional and tourism. So drones have been used in that realm for quite a while. Maybe that's something the county wants to look at or not look at in terms of we're going to fly some of the trails maybe in a place to promote that and help with promotion of some of the assets and resources the county has and we want to put out there. So it crosses a lot of the technology, or excuse me, a lot of the functional areas of the county, but then it also always comes back to GIS, geospatial. It's data that's being collected on a location, and then how can we A, collect it, and then B, disseminate it. So we can actually, disaster management would be another one. If a bridge gets knocked out from flooding, we can immediately go fly that. We don't have to contact a vendor to go get that. We can put up some equipment, and within a few hours we will have imagery of what that looks like, and then we can build models of that and distribute that to the public. So that's just one of many examples. Public safety has been using drones for search and rescue for a long time in this county. We don't plan to compete or really supplement or do anything different there. They're up and running with that program, but there's just so much more opportunity, and I think it's worthwhile for the county to look at because it's relatively inexpensive. It's very rapid to collect the information. It integrates back into our GIS database very quickly, and there are at this point in the memo it says we have a pilot program. We want to look at it and kind of put together what our use cases will be. Put together recommendations of like, these are our limitations, these are things we are not going to do, or if we do these are going to be the notification requirements that we're going to follow. So we have a whole lot of work we have to do before we're up and running, but we're investigating it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. My question is, we don't really have any county regs regarding private use of drones or commercial use of drones at this point, I don't think, do we?
George, we don't have any county regulations. I believe the FAA has recently released regulations for drones that are operating over a certain elevation.
For 400 feet.
400 feet, I
yeah,
believe.
And the FAA has rules around them.
Right. So outside of compliance with those FAA regulations, we have not established regulations regarding drones.
Yeah. I mean, because this is the state-of-the-art technology. I know there's lots of other people who are using this. Certainly realtors are using this throughout the county. And I just sort of question, as we work through some of the notifications and uses, whether we want to try to incorporate that into some sort of regulations, because you can envision as technology continues to improve, from recreational use to commercial use, we could just be buzzing throughout our airspace with drones. So that would be a question of concern. Patty, then Steve?
Yeah, I agree with George. We should be looking at if we need to incorporate something into a code. They are annoying. They are annoying as hell. I mean, there's a lot of them that come off Smuggler Mountain and Molly Gibson Park, and it literally sounds like you have a lawnmower running over your house 24 hours a day. So I think we need to be very careful with, hopefully in the newer technology as it emerges, the sound will get better. So I think we need to be careful with the uses and the notification, like George said, but I think it's something we definitely need to look into for various reasons, as you've already stated.
Steve?
I've been thinking of the pros and cons of the whole concept, and I can see really wonderful benefits from having a drone that we could use. We could do virtual site visits for everything we do on a land use thing, or looking at a translator site on a mountaintop. We could get an aerial view of it and get a picture really quickly that we could show on the screen here, and really save us a lot of time. We maybe would hardly ever have to do a site visit. Our site visits could be virtual ones right here in the room. But I think we have to be really careful how we use it. For instance, if there were a drone flying over my house and I didn't know whose it was and what it was doing there, my first inclination would be to try to shoot it down. Absolutely. And so if there are people who don't trust the county at all, and if there was any suspicion that the county were spying on somebody's property without having a search warrant or something, I think we need to be really careful how we use it and where we use it. Also, I did a little research. A friend of ours was working for a company in Oregon. The company's now owned by Quantum Spatial, which does aerial or helicopter flyovers, and it's amazing the product that they produce. I've seen some of the things they've produced, and on their website it talks about LiDAR mapping and digital ortho imagery are two of the things they do. And we might, or you might want to consider something like that, maybe to establish baseline data for the county, to have one flyover done of different parts of the county. And I was just picturing, in terms of the Crystal River Trail, if we had the 3D imagery from one flyover on the Crystal River, it would be a hugely useful tool, I think, for discussing the Crystal Trail and the different aspects of it. So that would be something that we maybe would want to consider, sort of separate from this the drone discussion, but just for in terms of getting 3D imagery for different parts of the county. So that's my thoughts. I'd be willing to go ahead with this, and it's sort of a a trial basis is what it sounds like we're doing, and I think we could make really good use for it, but I think we need to have really specific guidelines on how we use it, just to protect the privacy of the public.
Right.
I'm generally supportive. Some of the things others have brought up, I want to elaborate on a little bit. I think that it could benefit the biological inventory we're talking about. Open Space is talking about working with the Colorado Natural Heritage Project for this bio inventory of the county and the entire watershed. And I think information from something like this could be essential with that, and with the watershed plan that Roaring Fork Conservancy has been working with Healthy Rivers on and Rawapa on. So as a data collection thing, it's fantastic. I'd be a little concerned on how far this can go. You can become very specialized and have extremely expensive drones, while right now the price point of your basic drone is so low. It's sure, why not? Let's start with that. But then you reach a point where you wonder, when do we farm it out to pros who do it all the time? What do we keep in-house? It'll be interesting to know what the line is as the drones get more complicated. Just privacy issues and notification. If a drone could identify itself, we'd have a big solution to a problem, right? If you knew whose drone that was flying over you, it would really make a difference. And I wonder if that technology exists. And finally, actually, drones have been shot out of the sky here over Smuggler Mountain already. A couple of years ago, somebody was flying one at Winter Skull, and his drone went down, and he found it with a bullet in it. He actually found his drone. And it was something I saw online.
Yeah, they were 4th of July fireworks or something.
4th of July or
like
Winter
that.
Skull or something. Yeah, and so people are already shooting at them. So it's something to be concerned about. But I'd say sure. And as drones get smaller, they're going to get smaller and larger and quieter and noise. It's the full range of what they're going to be able to do. But I worry about what Steve worries about. If it's over my house, I'm going to want to try and shoot it down first. At the Maroon Bells, I've been up on several occasions where people have been flying drones over the lake to get that beautiful shot, and often the rangers don't even know where it's coming from. And I know, so issues like that, how many more of those incidents have to happen before people really get upset?
Well, to answer your one question about the identification of a friend or foe kind of technologies, they are very common and very much in use. That is, our drones could broadcast who they are and what they are. Anybody could pick up that multiple frequency signal and look at it. About your earlier question too, every 4 years we fly the entire county, and that forms the base map of the GIS. And that's the long-term strategic. The more tactical is something happens, a tree falls across the river on a bridge. You want to collect that data immediately, so it tends to be localized, small amounts of data and small durations of time. The thing we're looking for here is to talk about some of the policy implications, like you say, around notification. If we're going to fly over personal property, is that okay or is that not okay? You have to send a letter, and all of this, of course, exempts emergency situations. In emergencies, you do what's necessary to get things done. In emergencies, we would probably work with the sheriff's office on their search and rescue. That's more important than taking a picture of a bridge. So there are lots of ancillary uses for this technology. And most of the usage, I guess, questions and issues have been surfaced, and it's a matter of local jurisdiction. What the board is most comfortable with and what the citizenry is most comfortable with.
Are there we've got examples elsewhere. Other communities have been working with this, no doubt. It'd be nice to see what people are doing regarding privacy and noise issues.
I think we mentioned that Glenwood Springs or Garfield County is reviewing their policy. They have a policy, and it's going through its first review, I think.
We should follow that. We're going to look into that.
Rachel?
Yeah, I just would say I share the concerns that are expressed here, and I do think it's important to move forward. What they're able to do with GIS now, which Mary, is just amazing in terms of data and information and solving problems through that data. But I do share the privacy concerns, and I don't know to what authority we actually can regulate drone use in our community. We discussed it at some length several years back when Michael Owsley was still on the board, and we kind of backed off, realizing we both didn't know enough about it and how they were being readily employed. I think it may have come under the special events discussions and things like that, but we did back off because just limited information, and that they're already in pretty vigorous use now without hearing of complaints. But I do continue to have concerns. I mean, it's becoming a big brother society, and the flyovers have already happened, so I don't see this as doing anything different for our own GIS needs. I can see where it probably would have uses and advantages that we can't even think of now. Even augmenting that search and rescue drone if they want to search in 2 valleys at the same time, augmenting that. So I'm happy to move this forward.
So it sounds like we're obviously not going to establish specific policies, but one, we wanted to be sure the board was aware. We didn't want you to get a call about a drone going over a property just to find out it was ours and be surprised by that. So we wanted to make sure we had the conversation before we move forward, and that in general there was board support, which it sounds like there is. It also sounds like administratively we should start off working with some work on a policy framework to ensure that we're addressing kind of the privacy issues as well as any notification issues. And it sounds like we should start with the framework. Part of our challenge is, Rachel, I think exactly what you brought up, which is there's lots of different ways. I mean, we had no idea how we were going to be using these in so many different ways when they first came out. And I think drones are also that kind of disruptive technology, but that we should periodically or check in with you guys, let you know how we're using them, and if we're experiencing any issues that we need further policy direction on. But right now it really sounds like how we provide a framework to ensure private protection of privacy, particularly over private properties, and potentially if we're going to be using that unmanned vehicle, below that 400-foot limit over private properties, that we have some means of notification. So we'll work on the most effective way to do that. That's what I'm hearing, and then doing a periodic check-in, how we're applying the technology, and if there are other policy issues that arise as we move forward.
Greg?
One of the fun things to add to that, one of the fun uses of a drone, I'm told, is in Moab, for instance, that dirt bikers or ATVers will use the follow me function on their drone, and the drone will be following them as they cross the desert or go through the mountains. And I can imagine us having to discuss the implications of having drones follow mountain bikers or hikers as they're on a public trail or out in the backcountry. The wilderness regulations are going to apply already, I assume, but the thought of a recreational drone tagging along behind someone but alerting everyone within a mile is something I don't think I'd appreciate very much. So something else to think about.
Yeah, and I know those are becoming more. Those made it onto a Christmas list in our household. I know.
Follow me.
Those follow me ones.
Well, yeah, technological advances has their challenges, but they also have their uses as well. So that's what we're
So
hearing.
we'll continue to work on this. We just wanted to do a check-in before we move forward to make sure that generally the board was supportive, that we understood any concerns that you might have. We'll work administratively to address those, and at some point next year we'll check back in with you and let you know how it's moving forward.
So do we have some drones now? I mean,
We do.
public safety has drones, I'm assuming. And where are they housed, and who has access to them? Do you have to go through a training
There's a technical.
to
Yes,
utilize them?
there's I guess it's FAA Part 107 training, and not just training, but certification. And Mary has had all of her people trained and certified.
Remote pilot certification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that required if I were to go on Amazon and buy myself a drone? Is there anything required for me in terms of any sort of certification or licensing or?
Well, I do think there are different classifications of these unmanned aerial vehicles. There are plenty of drones that you could probably go to Ace Hardware right
Yeah.
now and buy one. But there are classifications and I think operating thresholds that once they're exceeded, you have to have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but pretty much you can buy one and go fly it. And
Yeah.
although to get through all the disclaimers to even get up in the air, it is telling you you have to understand the FAA rules as a consumer buying one of these. So obviously, you know, the technology is changing very fast. FAA is still trying to keep up with how to regulate these, and they may be coming out with more rules over time to help with some of the issues you guys are talking about as well.
Yeah, because enforcement is always an issue as well that we always have to deal with. I mean, you can put in these rules and regs, but if you don't have the ability to enforce.
Well, and to Rachel's earlier point, I think that was our biggest stumbling block when we started talking about should we have regulations. We stumbled right out of the blocks on how
Where
would
do you
we
start?
enforce, yeah.
I'm thinking, I don't know if it makes sense to duplicate FAA regulations. If they've already blanketed something, then we probably don't need to weigh in as much. I do notice here on one of these sites I found on it that there's the 5-mile circle around an airport, but they also say that there's a 5-mile circle around every helipad, which I did not know. And so if 5 miles from our airport, we're within 5 miles here. So
They're totally banned within 5 miles, correct?
banned within 5 miles.
So I think Smuggler Mountain there, or Molly Gibson Park, they're totally banned because they're within that 5
And
miles.
there's a helipad at the hospital, which I assume would
So
be.
that pushes it.
Moves it even closer. It moves it.
So really, we've got a lot of limitation already. I guess we really need to understand that.
All right.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
luck.
Thank you.
Let us know how it goes.
We will.
We'll bring you the virtual site visits.
Oh, good. Okay, let's see. We're going to have a discussion on our 2018 board retreat.
Thanks, George. And really, today was just about setting aside some time so the board would have an opportunity to have some dialogue so that we could start planning for the retreat. Each year, we do set aside some time where the board goes generally off-site for up to 1.5 or 2 days to allow the board to go in depth on issues. Our standard regular meetings and work sessions allow us a limited amount of time on a lot of issues. It doesn't always allow us to really take a either really concentrated look at an issue or really look big picture. And so retreats typically have two kinds of purposes. One purpose is when the organization has reached a point that it needs to revisit its strategic direction and develop a set of long-term goals. Typically a retreat is used to do that. For example, our strategic plan. Or if the organization, the other main way a retreat is designed is if there are already a number of large goals or objectives that the organization is pursuing, that the board have an opportunity to look in depth or spend time on those larger projects and goals and make sure that the organization has the right direction, and if we need to do any course corrections, that you have a concentrated opportunity to do that, which does not always happen in the course of our work sessions or regular meetings. And so really what I wanted to do today was to get a sense of what conversations we want to have when we come together in February for our retreat. You may recall during our last future agenda discussion, we set aside February 6th and 7th as days for the board retreat. You'll see that reflected on our calendar discussion in a little bit. And so we really need to begin planning for those 2 days. And so I wanted to set aside some time to get some direction about what types of conversations the board would like to have and to get some feedback on venue and structure and that sort of thing.
Patty?
Well, we have been talking a lot about housing issues, about housing impact fees, about the county's purchasing of housing, about where we're going to be looking for housing opportunities, and about our relationship with APSHA. So I just want to run it by the board. Maybe that's a good topic for us to really have time to spend, especially at the beginning of the year when we've got, a lot going on right now. But I just think that this might be a key opportunity for us to really get into the broader aspects and how we approach housing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We have a couple of really pressing issues that I think are going to take the forefront in 2018. One is the airport, and I think it would be a good opportunity for us to spend some quality time addressing some of the concerns. And I guess let me back up for a second. I would sort of couch 2018 as trying to address what I'm seeing is a lot of controversy and conflict resolution, basically, on many different aspects. So whether it's concern about the expansion of our runway, the airport, and how that may impact the community concerns, the Crystal River Valley Trail concerns, how we integrate with the city, with their mobility lab, and what does that mean when we look outside the roundabout, and how that may impact the county and people coming in and out of town. I also had the landfill. There's a lot going on there. How do we really try to address the future needs on that? So the housing I had as well. So those are some key issues. We have the Healthy Community Fund. I don't know whether we want to spend some quality time at a retreat versus just work sessions on the Healthy Community Fund, because that's going to be a critical issue as it ties into so many things. So there's a lot of pressing issues that are going to come to bear in 2018, and these are just a few of them that I've noted. All right, John.
Yeah, just building off of others' comments already, I had used the term for myself, loose ends and completion, because there's so many projects that are going forward. And so I always like to know things are either completed fully or very close to or on a path to before taking on new big rocks, so to speak. And so, I would just, along with conflict resolution, George, I think that's a good, accurate way to look at a number of issues we're resolving. But to me, it's also loose ends and completion. So I did have written down ballot issues discussion, whether it's just Health and Human Services, Healthy Community Fund. There's a little contemplation about the structure of that, because it would be the long-term funding source for the human services as opposed to just something that has to get renewed every 6 years, so we really have to think about how that's structured. I don't know if there's potential of other ballot issues that would affect us, whether they're statewide or within our community. It may be something that the housing discussion really leads to a question about additional funding sources either for APSHA as its own tax or for the county. And, and it may not be, I'd say more likely than not, it's not ripe for 2018, but it might be something to get onto a path for going towards 2020 or something like that. The other thing I really have down is just kind of what I'm putting down is this kind of federal reboot that is occurring and will occur with this budget coming up. After they pass the tax bill, the pay-as-you-go rules are supposed to go back into effect. It could be some really very serious cuts. And just today in the paper was an article about Mountain Family Health not refilling a number of vacancies and kind of letting staff go because the federal program for funding for federal health homes it has not been renewed yet. Now, maybe it should or it shouldn't, but I think there's just a lot of federal reboot, and I'm expecting to see dramatic cuts in what the state is able to provide that passes through to counties for HHS. So we'll just have to see. But how do we start to prepare for that? Is it something we try to find ways to fill the gap and Band-Aid it over, or do we let those programs go and tell the public, call Representative Tipton and ask him about what happened to those programs? So I see those sort of things, and then I know we were talking about trying to find guest speakers again, and I don't know if you want names now of people that people have been thinking about, or should we just hand them to you later to call? And
I think if there are names now, it may be good to get out. I was thinking that if we understood the topics that we might be talking about might affect how you want to do the panel, or how you want to do the panel might affect the topic. So I guess it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg, but I think it would be good to have whatever topics and structure we land on to mesh well with that final panel. But we could certainly start throwing those names out as a way of maybe sorting out how we structure the retreat at the end of the day. So I'll leave that up to you guys.
Yeah, I would just piggyback off that. I thought last year we were able to tap into the Aspen Institute for really an interesting speaker who brought sort of that national level issues to light. And so I would see who might be in town, who might be available, who might be of interest for us and for them to participate as perhaps a guest speaker.
Kind of a keynote, because she talked about things that were of interest but not part of necessarily the panel. And I was thinking the same thing, George, and it might be an opportunity for us to meet the new president who's taking over for Walter Isaacson.
Yeah, if he's in town,
and
that
that
would be
just
great.
as an introductory, because I know he's kind of new into the community, but it would be a great opportunity for us to have that, to have him at the table. I think that might be key.
Right, yeah. Steve?
My first thought was to look at the 6 public health priorities that were identified, and also at our own 5 main priorities that we looked at last year, and use them as a starting point for figuring out what topics we want to talk about this year. A few things kind of rise to the top in my mind on what we might want to have be topics of discussion. One would be affordable housing, mental health, access to health care, food security, energy resiliency, and aging issues are ones that I put down that are, all of them are things that are huge roadblocks to us potentially that could lead to a crisis situation coming at us. And we talk about them and try to develop a strategy or policies around trying to deal with these things, would be good. And there might be others. I didn't look at our whole list of what we had done before, but that just adds a few more ideas to what to deal with or what to talk about at the retreat.
How many weeks are we taking this retreat?
I know, I was just going to say, we're getting into this is like days, but I think George's point about the airport and the trails and these issues that we're feeling so much public input, which we appreciate and we want, but how do we use it to the advantage of the process? So I don't know if there's such a thing as a conflict coach or somebody who could come in and help us, give us a little hour or something presentation on, okay, you're being hit from all sides. How do you guys sort through it, and how do you field it without internalizing it and without improperly externalizing it? And I think that might be a good opportunity for us to address George's point, because it is going to be a year full of just what George was saying.
And I think the short answer to that is yes. I think there are a number of ways to approach both the conversation about why the conflict in general happens in this environment, and also then the strategies for
And that might be
dealing with
beneficial
it.
for all of us.
So we can definitely structure something around that, because that probably is right now, as we're doing bigger projects and we're taking on bigger issues, everyone has an opinion on those, and it turns out not everyone agrees, and so we're going to have conflict on a number of these larger issues that certainly we could work on a training and conversation around if that's the board's desire.
Great. Sure. I want to follow up on that, echo that. I think that makes great sense, George. I had what I wrote for mine for a big rock is review our public process and our assumptions, look at how things are going, and look at our, compared to our stated goals, and having somebody come and help us with that. I think that syncs up right with what everyone is saying. A couple other things I had in here to echo, regarding housing. Are there any innovative ways we can get all of these empty bedrooms in our community filled with people who need them at times? Are there incentives, programs? So housing, maybe using TDRs in various ways. We keep talking about TDRs. Net zero is the buzzword. It's the catchphrase in energy conservation lately, and many communities, even states, California, is going toward net zero for commercial, residential. I don't see any reason why we can't start working toward that, both for new construction and even for remodels, whether it's through mitigation in some cases or through really cracking down on our continuous use of fossil fuel for energy. It just doesn't seem necessary anymore all the time, but we're so used to it, we keep doing it. We could tie energy efficiency to growth in the valley and to housing and so many other things. Regarding what Rachel said about public lands, I was thinking public lands with the new, I like your term there, the federal reboot. As we enter this new world where the feds are being defunded, the people who are caring for the public lands around us, can we and should we take up the slack, and what would it take for us to take a larger role in helping care for our public lands in the absence of a Fed that's functional? I think that's extremely important to me. I've got a couple small rocks here. I just have to throw them in. One is, we were talking earlier about the highway. The highway cleanup, it's not our job, but Highway 82 is the worst I have ever seen it right now. There is such a mess out there. Either some of the people caring for it have abdicated, or it's just really messy. But maybe that's something. If I don't get to it before the retreat, I'll get my kids out there and start cleaning up. That's a small rock. The other thing, I thought I had another small rock here. I just want to check and see. I really think, after hearing a few comments from HR and other people in the community, in the county especially, I'd like to come up with an initiative as a small rock to work with engaging county employees better and incorporating them in our community so they really feel as if they're participating. The thought of an employee of the county coming up to work here, then having to go off to a distant residence somewhere, but not really feeling like they're participating in the community, doesn't serve them and it doesn't serve us. And I'm just wondering what we can do if we, for employees throughout the entire community, not just the county, but perhaps a program of some sort to help engage people in community. Maybe it's already happening. I'd like to work on that, though.
Okay.
So we should start sending down.
So this will be easy to build in.
So we've got sort of a macro, and then we have sort of a micro.
Yeah.
In terms of
satellite and drone.
Well, so and even if because there's a lot of particular topics that have been brought up that maybe those are kind of a series of work session items, but what I'd like to do is take an opportunity to take what all of you have kind of brought up and try and build it into an agenda to bring back to you.
Perfect.
And let's see how close I get to something that seems like we're having the types of conversations that they're going to be meaningful and move the needle forward as much as possible. And then in terms of it sounds like the structure of the retreat, some things that we had proposed, I think our location the past couple of years has worked well. It's
perfect.
It's been convenient and such. We already actually took the liberty of booking it just because we didn't want to take the risk of losing it. But if you want to change venues, we should probably have that conversation now, or if you're good with doing it in the Cato room at the Institute, we do have that reserved at this point.
That's great.
I think it's perfect.
That's
Okay.
great.
And then it does sound like the panel component is one thing that everyone does want to preserve from the previous agendas. In terms of names and such, George, you brought up an idea, so I'll follow up with the Institute to see who might be in town and who might be available. I think that worked out really well for us last year. If you all had names in mind, would you rather give those to me to try and build a panel to bring back to you, or would you rather talk about them now?
I would suggest anybody has some names, just funnel them to John.
Just send them over to John.
But I would like to come back first and have more of an agenda in front of us, and because there's so many ideas and they're all good ideas, but we have a limited amount of time, and one of the faults, I think, of a lot of agendas that are put together for retreats is organizations try to do too much in a short period of time, and so there's really a feeling that we really don't. There's not a closure on any specific item. So, I think in the past we've looked at maybe 4 or 5 different topics realistically, and how we're going to fit them into the retreat, and then once we sort of have a consensus about those topics, then I think it's a little easier to start to put some names on for some panels that may be part of that topics, or it doesn't necessarily have to be.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
We need to have some nexus to the topic, I think, in the guest speaker.
And so, to your point, because we do have a lot of topics, and what I was going to suggest is let me go back to staff and kind of see which ones are going to have the most time sensitivity or urgency to them, since we're doing this so early in the process, because we have some pretty major things kind of in process right now, and we're going to need to have a check-in and make sure we're headed in the right direction. And I would suggest, if we're going to go into topics, it sounds like we have an umbrella topic about we understand we're going to be in a more controversial environment as we pursue these, so developing some perspective and some skills around dealing with that environment is going to be important, and then maybe identifying the ones that seem to have the most urgency that are going to be coming to you the quickest this next year. And then for those that you've identified, that maybe we don't spend the retreat time on, we start to build those into work sessions in that second and third, because it doesn't mean we don't talk about them, it just means they might be more of a possibility for the future.
Yeah, it's kind of like broadband's a good example. We touched on that at retreat, but we had ongoing work sessions as that initiative developed.
Yeah, facilities, which used to be on there, I think probably are, that's not going to be as big a discussion. And so, yeah. Exactly.
Other thoughts, Greg?
Last, I've been rattling this idea around with people in the Valley who are involved in this sort of thing. I've been calling it Aspen 2050 for lack of a better term. Just what if we took a real long distance view and
what
thought
about Picken County 2050, not Aspen?
I was getting to that, thank you, because I've made that same leap. Thank you very much. But the idea is that let's put ourselves far enough in the future and really look at what we have and where we think we want to go, just to give us a sense of perspective. And I'd like to leave it at that and see if anyone else thinks that might be useful.
I can see that in a non-time consuming way. Let me put it that way. There's just too much in the immediate, and that's what we have Aspen area community plans for, and that was recently redone and adopted, and we're not at our retreat going to redo those goals. Perhaps discussing how more of those can be implemented makes sense to me, But I'm going to be dead before 2050, and so it gets a little hard to discuss.
Really, not necessarily.
With my family history, believe me, we're not getting
We hope not,
that far along. But it just, I want something that's implementable and real and here out of the retreat.
Out of the retreat.
As opposed to, trying to envision what we want the community to be in 2050 or how we want the community to be in 2050. There's enough pressing problems in front of us today, in my mind.
Some of these issues will address that. What will be what's the impact of an airport in 2050? What's the impact of a trail up the Cristo in 2050? So I think we can get to some of those ideas. In some of those discussions, some of those issues that are pressing and are immediate. But I like your idea, John, in terms of going to staff and seeing for them what are the pressure points that they're going to feel in 2018 and some of the bigger issues that would be important for us to have some good discussion on, and so we'll be able to provide some informed and educated direction.
Okay. Well, and so I'll take this input and I'll try, and like I said, not everything, unless you want to schedule a week, we could do that too.
No.
But
on a beach.
Yeah, or we can talk. So we'll come back with an agenda, and just understand it's going to have to try and take these ideas and compress them, and also probably prioritize them, and we'll do the best we can as staff and let you guys edit. I will want to finalize to the greatest degree possible, because the closer we get to the retreat, the harder it is to put the panel together. So finalizing that panel is going to be really important to do probably at our first meeting in January at the latest.
All right, great. Good.
Thanks.
Good discussion.
Is that enough for you?
Just give me a few ideas.
Okay, let's see if we got future agendas next.
Yep, give me just a second here. So we're going to talk about next year's calendar in a little bit here. The item that I wanted to get on your radar screen is on January 15th. Public Health has organized a couple days for their staff to do strategic planning. There's a presenter coming in that's talking about basically health equity, talking about how do you apply concepts of equity into public policy as they relate to public health. And that speaker is going to be here on January 15th from 10 to 2. As we were talking about that presentation, we thought it would be a really good presentation for any of the members of the current Board of Health who would be interested in attending to come and just use it as an opportunity to kind of see how public health policy is really being viewed in terms of social equity issues and those sorts of things. So that will be from January 15th from 10 to 2. We'll get an invite out to you guys as a board, but we wanted to put that on your... Is that a holiday?
Yeah.
Martin Luther King.
It's marked on here, I think, unless I'm...
Yeah, it is Martin Luther King.
Oh, it's Martin Luther King. Gosh, we didn't plan that.
Just so you know.
Right, so let me check that date again with Karen. Their speaker was a little hard to
get up here.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think you should definitely put it on our schedule.
Okay. At this point, outside of our calendar discussion that we'll have in a little bit, January will be a little slower, thankfully, than November and December have been for you. So.
Have we decided on the 2nd yet? Of January?
Actually, I think you guys took a wait and see on the 2nd, so let's see what's on here.
There was just the energy code.
Right now, I think we still have just the energy code on here. I'm just going to make sure nothing new got uploaded here.
What's the matter, George?
My screen is blank. I lost my future agendas for some reason.
So was your face.
Mine just came back, George.
Oh, okay.
So give it a second. I think the
Interesting.
network may have been running a little slow. Yeah, so far we have the energy addendum at 2 o'clock and your updates on January 2nd. So I'll put it to you again. Do you guys want us to reschedule the energy updates, or you want to be
I'd
here?
rather reschedule.
Yeah.
That's all there is.
We'll reschedule.
Thank you.
We've been keeping it light just in case, because
I had, to go along with that, though, the only thing I have, because my agenda still hasn't come up, I had a note that on January 9th, there is a large gap in the morning, I noticed. But
yeah, there is. So
Still
we'll close that gap, George, as we
yeah,
get closer.
and maybe you could utilize that energy addendum
Yep.
for that period of time. Okay, anybody else on future agendas?
I do have one question. On February 13th, I won't be here. I'll be out of town, and I'll give you those specific dates. But this room wasn't available. I thought we were kind of generally booked in here, so we don't know where we're going to have that regular work session meeting.
Oh, I have not had that conversation yet with
I just think it's interesting that we're getting thrown out of our own room.
Well,
I thought we were just booked in for those dates in the
Tuesdays
future.
forever.
Because it's difficult for us to find a place we can have a meeting on a Tuesday all day with grassroots.
yeah, you're right.
Just food for thought.
Yeah, so I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
That's
Anybody
That's
else?
the only
Future
thing I have
agendas?
right now. And I'll give you the dates I'm going to be gone.
Okay, so let's see. Rich is here, but Chandler coming, so we're early. So Chandler's not coming? No. Oh, so why don't we have you come up, and then we'll take a break after that.
Yeah, he's a little under the weather apparently and didn't want to.
Oh, really? I can't relate to that.
Yeah,
it seems to be going around.
It is really going around, isn't it? So, let me get this loaded here. If you give me a second.
And this will be a building project update. I'm going to just grab some
Yes.
water.
Even though he's fun bad, I still had him put together a PowerPoint.
Let's design the monument. We could do that as a group.
You want to do that all at once?
Let's do a group monument design.
You want to get in on time?
I gave my suggestions.
You know how camels were invented.
Bean as in wildebeest, right?
Yeah.
Slide this over. John, I'll just hand these to you and then we'll just circulate them around these. I'll explain them. If you can't figure them out.
Does sheriff have 2 R's or 2 F's?
Okay.
I don't know. Don't ask me right now. You can.
Oh, gee.
I can tell you
I
it's
do that every
wrong, but
time.
which way is
I am
wrong?
getting it off of that. How's that?
As long as the building doesn't,
Yeah, it won't. It won't. I can assure you that because we decided no signs on the building, right? So I can assure
I'm
you
going to
it
say
won't be on the
sheriff
building.
or somewhere discreet, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll explain those to you. I just wanted you to see if you can pick out
so
which
confused.
ones.
You can put them on the Elmo when you get to that point.
Oh,
This is much more fun to try and figure out.
yeah, it's like a puzzle.
It is like a game.
You know, I just failed. So.
So you can probably go ahead.
Oh, you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah.
Okay.
You think?
All right.
Yeah.
Sure. Rich,
Patty
Engelhardt,
touch these?
Chief Operations Officer.
Patty touched those?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'll look at them under the Elmo.
Yeah, we'll
You just started on
I'll
this
touch
one.
them.
Yeah, really.
Maybe I should have started that way.
Yeah, they're brutal.
No, I just.
No chicken soup for any of
No
you when
chicken
you get
soup for
sick. Nah, I'm
Get
cutting you
my
off.
zinc this afternoon, my chicken soup.
Extra D.
Well, okay, I'll go ahead and get started here. Again, commissioners, for the opportunity to always come and sit in front of you and update y'all. Talk a little bit about the project next door, and then also just briefly on the ambulance project as well. So you know, when we went through the naming process, we talked about plaza. Just so you know, whenever you see these, this is the way that the construction crew defines which part is what of the project. So we aren't changing that name of this. It's just a definition. So Chandler, when he talks about it, I was going to mention that last time we updated because it can get a little confusing. So on the plaza, which is the existing building, this is that side of the wing, or that portion of it. So on the plaza side right now, exterior, there is major exterior work going on. As you know, it's been tinted, and there has been a lot of brickwork going on. And I'm hoping that you guys pop in every once in a while and kind of look, but we will get a tour going. But the masons are just doing an exceptional job there. With that interior painting starting in the basement, framing and rough in, drywall is in process on all those other floors, and I'll have some pictures of those. And this is on the addition portion of it now. So on the new part of the building itself, on the exterior, the framing is in progress. Stucco is just about done on the east side, and we've talked about having to get in ahead of the city to do our stucco. So we had to tint that, get the stucco work done, and they'll move on around to the gel side. Masonry is in progress as well. And then same way, the framing and rough-in is in progress on all of those floors. So we're moving along at a good clip. Some of the biggest challenge we have right now are just the utility installations, and if you happen to drive back by there this afternoon when I was coming into, or this noon when I was coming into park, the garage was full. And again, we're opening up that whole area between the two projects, and it is just really challenging, and the tensions are rising between our side and their side because they're trying to get work scheduled for both. It really has been quite a coordinated effort, and but we're all doing well, and we're getting along fine. Here's a few pictures. This is showing the mechanical units, new mechanical units that are on the plaza side, looking towards the mountain there. Energy efficient, and someday, you know, it'd be really nice if we can figure out a way to do the same at the HHS building, because we've been talking about that with the ambulance project, and get rid of those huge monsters that are up there, because I heard you talking, Greg, about energy and efficiency. So just know we're paying attention to that on this building for sure. This is just a shot of the inside on the plaza side looking out. I think it's the second story. You can see that the drywalling is going in and the taping is taking place. Another shot of that, and what's always interesting is what you see in the top right-hand corner up there is just all the utilities and the raceways that are developed, and you have to run all those lines through there before we put the drop ceilings in. And in a lot of these, you'll see different height ceilings, trying to get as much height as we could for the office space, but also accommodating for the utilities. Here's a shot looking at the plaza. The fascia is on now, and I might mention up where the fascia is, you got a soffit, it's got the Tyvek on it, but the fascia itself, we got a little bit of what's called oil canning going on there, and they said the product was delivered that way. It wasn't part of the installation, so we're going to take a look at whenever the sun hits it, you can kind of see that a little bit. So we're going to try to address it. Yeah, it just kind of waves. Yeah. They call it oil canning.
It's actually just the colors rather than the texture, right? Its colors are surface. Is the actual? It's
no,
actually
it's
warping.
It's kind of the metal itself. Yeah, and it came. What's interesting, it came in sheets. Usually, if it's a rolled product, it'll have some of that in it. This came sheet-wise, so we're gonna investigate that a little bit more. But the nice thing about it is that our construction team over there notices all this stuff.
They're really into it.
So they're really taking care of it for us, and really give a lot of attention to detail. Here's the front of the area. You can see the larger windows there. That's a meeting room that's above that one gentleman that's working there, and then I believe those are your BOCC windows down below the scaffolding. That's facing towards Veterans Park. Go ahead, John.
I think that's the side of the building, just looking at
yes, our white beam.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Front.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah.
I have the vantage point to see both of them. So.
Yes, you do. Okay, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's my fault because there's a staircase coming down off the left side there. So, and then again, just the south stone veneer, showing the type of work that's being done. They're just really doing a nice job. So, And this kind of gives you an example of some of the work that's starting to happen on the jail side there in between the two buildings. So they're getting ready to put in a lot of the utility work in that. So it's very tight itself. So we're cruising along on that. But a couple of things that I'd just like to mention is that John and I have talked briefly about a time capsule. And at some point we really need to think about doing that, I guess, if that's something you'd like to do.
Aren't you supposed to do that before they pour the concrete foundation?
Yeah, no. Well, there's 100 different ways of doing it.
Though,
Yeah,
right?
well, you want to do it actually where they can dig it back up without destroying the building. So it'd probably be closer to when we're doing Veterans Park, or the sidewalk in the front of the
That's
building.
what we're talking
so,
about.
Yeah, so we do have an opportunity if the board's interested in doing something like a time capsule that would represent this period of time. So, Rich, sorry.
Oh, sure. We've talked about with the monument going out into a kind of a prominent location out there. And there was desire from the board to do some landscaping around that. It's a perfect opportunity, a great place to put it, is out underneath that monument someplace. So somebody can't just come dig it up. It's going to take something to move that monument and to really get into it. But again, we certainly would entertain thoughts on that. We've done it where every department can, pick something that they'd like to put in it. Size doesn't really matter since it's not going into the corner of the building. But it's something I think that we have a little time, but it's something to really start considering now of some of the kind of neat things you'd like to put into that time.
We could bury it in an internal combustion engine vehicle.
Right. Yeah.
Put all the stuff inside.
Yeah.
I'd
that
love
size
to.
might not work.
I like the idea of actually making this something the public could participate in, and we do put some size limits on it because people may come out of the woodwork with ideas that haven't occurred to us.
Sure.
And is the board interested in doing a time capsule?
Yeah,
That's
I would
be. Just
I'd be interested. I don't know how we select or limit, the public. Do you say your thing you submitted isn't good and yours is good?
We do that every day.
We do that, and so you have to
Okay, so we get to decide what they submit. What
Another
gets in.
conflict
No, I
resolution.
think we have to come up with a little bit of a size of the capsule or whatever.
Yeah, bring
it's
it
a
back.
capsule, not
Size
a trunk.
limits.
Yeah, we can do that.
And some thought into it. And
The smaller your entry, the more chance you'll get of it getting in.
Yeah. Okay, so we will start down that road as well. There is a group that's headed to Denver in the next week and a half to really try to finalize some of the furniture. So it's a visioning team. I think there's about 9 of them going over, so to really dial that in. And so we're still on track with the order. They are going to look at doing a mock-up here locally so that all the employees can come and take a look at what kind of a standard office space would look like. So that's in the works. And then as far as, you have any questions on the project before I jump to the ambulance side? Oh, yes, I want to show these photos here.
let me put those up. And then Patty was asking about board chairs.
Board chairs.
Yes, we are going to, my understanding is we're not going to reuse the ones that are in storage, correct?
Yes.
Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to bring in some samples for you all.
Let us hang around in them.
Yep. Yeah, we'll bring in, I hope we can get 3 in here because I always think it's better to choose from 3 instead of 2.
Yeah,
And let you sit in them and see what you think.
that'd be great.
Those are on the way. So what these are, I put this in purple just to kind of give you a sense, but you recall the type of signs that we were looking interior, kind of had that wave to it. So this is a mine shaft room.
Right.
That would be on the sign outside of that.
I know who painted that, by the way. If you want to go back to the artist who did that sign.
The smuggler?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Is that a painting or a
Well,
photo?
it's white on. No, the painting.
Oh,
no,
got
the
it, got
actual
it.
white paint on the sign.
Oh, on
Yeah,
the sign
yeah.
itself.
Who made the sign? Right.
Yeah, okay. This is the Roaring Fork meeting
Great
room.
photo.
Isn't that a great photo? Mm-hmm. And I wish I could say where these came from, but Pat was in charge of that, and I think some were
That was Jeremy
professional and
Swanson.
some I think we had done. So this was a shot that both had the maroon bells and then also a pyramid. So we like the photo. So the way the sign lines up, this is going to be pyramid. And you can see it on the left, and then the sign would kind of cut that off and cut out the maroon bell. So that's going to be what pyramid room
These are
sign
like
will
the
look
plaques out in front of the
like. In
doors.
front of the rooms, just in front of the rooms themselves.
So it gives you an idea how we're trying to do some of our...
Using the actual photo for the sign.
Yeah, This is really a terrible photo, but I just want to give you a sense of, we were trying to mess with it. The photo that we've selected is really attractive, and this is it. But doesn't give a lot of confidence, does it, in this? But again, we're trying to get the bells in, both bells in, and then that would be for the maroon bells room upstairs. And then generally for the entire building itself, we're looking for a panoramic that kind of takes a look at some mountain scene around this area here, kind of that would be on every sign throughout the building. So.
Have you considered black and white by any chance? Just the sign, like the photograph. I'm just wondering if black and white image might actually last longer than color.
It was part of the process that we went through, and the visioning team, the group just felt black and white just
wasn't doing it.
Wasn't going to do enough, and really give a sense of what they were looking for. So, but it was investigated.
Okay.
So. And the nice thing is these come as separate things. I mean, at some point we may want to switch them all out, and
that's true, right? Maybe they can switch
different pictures. At least on the general ones, it'd take a board decision to change the names of the rooms. But anyway, so.
Or the building.
Any other questions on that? Yeah, or the building? Yes.
I can send you some names of people who do panoramas. I just can think of people who've done spectacular panoramas of our peaks here that might be useful.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, I know Pat's on that one now.
No, she's she probably knows the same people. Yeah.
Okay. And then the only other thing is on the ambulance project. We are scheduling January 9th from 5:30 to 7 o'clock for our final public meeting, and that really is kind of a wrap-up. And the intent of that is to go back out to the public. Again, majority of people are the residents in that area. Show them the schematic design that you all had recommended we move forward with, and then just really show them all the different design changes, or the final design that took into consideration the concerns that they had about height, about noise, about lighting. So all of that will be kind of a wrap-up meeting with that. We are getting ready to submit to the city for our permit, and so we'll be going through their process here in the real near future. So
where's that going to be again?
That'll be at the HHS building, or the ambulance building, one of the two. We're trying to get that lined up. It'll be in that general area again.
All right, any questions for Rich?
No, thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, board would like to take a break? 10 minute, 15 minute, what would you like?
I'd rather go 10 if we can.
10-minute break? 10-minute break, okay. 10-minute break. Let's see, we're going on to our 2018 BOCC Chair and Vice Chair discussion. So it should be a quick discussion.
It should be a quick discussion, George. It's just we always like to bring back and just remind the board that each year at the first regular meeting, there is an appointment of the chair and vice chair. We'll also do all the committee appointments and such at that point and have that conversation. It has been the board's practice since 2005 to basically rotate the chairmanship and vice chairmanship by district, in order of district. Of course, that does not work out perfectly because there's 5 of you and 4-year terms. And it's also been the board's practice not to have a first-year commissioner come in and have to chair meetings right away while they're in their learning curve, which was the case, I think, this past year. And so currently, George, of course, you're chair, and Patty is vice chair. The way the rotation would work by our past practice would be Patty would be chair, and we'd prepare a resolution to that effect, with Greg stepping in as vice chair in his second year. The rotation in 2019 then would, of course, be Greg as chair in his third year. Steve would then be up as vice chair, with Steve as chair in 2020, and then there will have to be another conversation. There will be election for Commissioner District 2 at that point, and I think you need to see what happens there. So unless the board has any desire to change this past practice, which is certainly not our recommendation, I think it's worked well. Overall, we will go ahead and prepare a resolution to this effect for your first regular meeting.
Everyone okay with that?
Greg, you okay with it?
Sure.
Up for it?
Well, it's funny. Every time I talk to John, he goes, well, give yourself 6 months to get up to speed. And then 6 months in, he said, give yourself 6 months. So
that was for each issue.
Yeah. So I think I'm probably getting up to speed.
Yeah, Steve?
It's always another 6 months.
I know we had the discussion before. The last time was when Rob Ittner was up for re-election, and his re-election year, he was the chair that year. And I noticed that Patty would be, during her re-election year, would be chair, and also with me in 2020 would be the re-election year. But I have no problem with being chair during the election year.
It was a
Is
concern
okay
that
with
Jack
me.
Hatfield had brought up before, for people just saying, are you sure you want
Do all of
that
this in 1 year.
responsibility while you will be running?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that if we tried to work that end to never have anybody during their re-election year be the chair, that would be add a complexity level to it that I don't think we want to go there, and I personally don't have any problem with being chair that year.
I did ask Patty that as a courtesy, particularly to our point about the retreat, that we've got more and bigger and controversial projects, and the chair has some additional responsibilities, of course, during that time. So.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, let's see. We'll move on to our discretionary fund discussion.
Yeah, so each year we budget $10,000 in the board discretionary fund. And that fund is used as requests come up during the year that we would not or could not have anticipated, during the budget process.
Sorry to interrupt. The music got too loud during break and the sound is all chirpy. So if I can stop you guys for a couple of minutes, it's not really going over well.
Sure.
Okay.
Technical issue.
Technical
We're
issues.
having a technical issue, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes with sound. Okay.
Okay.
restart on the board's discretionary fund. Each year, we balance $10,000 for requests that we just could not have anticipated during the budget process. Each year at the end of the year, there's usually a balance left in that board discretionary fund, and it's been the practice of the board to look at distributing those funds to nonprofits at the end of the year. This year, the board has not spent a lot of that fund. There's $8,550 remaining in that fund. And so I just wanted to provide some opportunity for the board today to ask if you do want to distribute that remainder of the fund, and if so, how would you like to do it?
Can you remind us how we utilized those funds last year at the end of the year? Do we have that?
And I don't have that, but as I recall, there were, I believe you split it between the homeless shelter, the food pantry,
and the Hope Center.
And I think the Hope
Center, those three, yeah. And I think traditionally we've done those as we get into the winter months.
That is true, George. That historically, I think you've looked at those services that are maybe in higher demand given the season.
Yeah. Okay, Greg.
The first one that came to mind was whether it's food pantry, I guess Lift Up, is that, or something like Lift Up?
We do more directly to our local food bank rather than through
them. Okay. The other two things I know we've discussed in the past were, of course, the Mountain Family, or West Springs, Mine Springs and West Springs. Steve, I know, had brought it up. I've brought that up as an option. And then I did want to ask, at the most recent RWAPA meeting, we discovered that our expenses for the transition to a new director are going to be probably in the neighborhood of $5,000 or $6,000 more in the next year. And I don't know if we can come for a RWAPA $1,000 grant through the discretionary fund or not. Is that something that can be done with discretionary funds? Is that the right place to ask?
Well, so right now these funds are already appropriated. So if the board made the decision to distribute these funds towards that, you wouldn't need to come back for a supplemental. The other option would be to look at a supplemental request. So if it's in addition to what we've already budgeted in the 2018 budget, which right now is coming out of our Healthy Rivers and Streams Fund, it would be a supplemental ask from them. So it would be a separate ask, I guess, from the discussion today.
Seems to me that perhaps that would be more appropriate.
Or WAPA.
Yeah.
Yeah, Patty?
Yeah, I was approached by a gentleman, Bob Cook, from the Veterans organizations. They are looking at some expenses related to the Veterans Winter Games that are coming up. It's through the Elks Club. They need some help with some funds to build the ramps that they need, the wooden ramps they need to facilitate the comings and goings of the veterans. And so I was thinking maybe if we could contribute $1,000 towards that would be great. It would go through the Veterans Elks organization right here in town, so it would be definitely local and something they would hopefully be able to then reuse year after year until they needed to replace the ramps. And I thought that would be a good effort on our part to support the Veterans Winter Games.
That's a good idea. I wonder what they used in the past.
I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. But
yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Or maybe it's just come the time to replace them, or
the
maybe
old ramps died.
Yeah, or maybe they found that they needed them in the past and didn't have them.
Yeah, all right.
I think that would be great. Whether it be $1,000 or $2,000, whatever the board would decide, I think a donation to that would be great.
Yeah, I'd support $1,000 on that.
I'll back that up.
Steve, your hand was up then, Rachel?
And I'll call Bob.
Yeah, I was thinking of something for the veterans, and we had talked about giving some to the Western Slope Veterans Coalition. And I have another thought on that right now, that I'm actually working on bringing a speaker in who would talk about suicide prevention and treatment for veterans. It's a national expert who's been working in that field. And that would be sometime next year, and maybe at that time we could use our discretionary fund to help fund that program when the time comes,
We know more about
rather
it.
than do something now. And we could put the veterans' money towards Patty's suggestion. So I really like her idea.
Okay, good. Rachel?
Yeah, I am supportive of the veterans' ideas Patty's brought forward. I just wanted to check with John first, and that total you gave us of $8,500 remaining, that's after the $1,000 to support our athletes who
That's
are going
correct.
to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were counting everything. I can support, an additional $1,000 to Mine Springs as part of their capital construction, as Greg's brought forward. I think we thought we'd look further at the end of the year, and no, it's not much, but they've got a real statewide and robust fundraising effort. I don't know that it would be premature or not to throw $1,000 towards the Mountain Family Health fundraiser for their capital, for their center at the same time.
Great
So
idea.
we're working a little locally. That would bring us down to about $5,500, and I would split the balance pretty much between the homeless shelter and the food bank. And I think the food bank has really been seeing some extra demands because
They
the
have.
work is so slow this year. So that's what I would do unless there's something else that's come forward that's additional.
Well, yeah, I would, given our new partnership for our mental health initiative, I would propose giving some money to the Hope Center as well.
Do you want to do a three-way split like we did last year?
Yeah.
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 Great idea.
The only thing about that for me is we're going to have the larger contract discussion on mental health issues tomorrow, I think, with that contract coming forward.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. And, I could be wrong about this, but it's my understanding that Hope Center did not receive a grant from the Healthy Community Fund because of that new contract going forward. And so, to me, I hate to say this, but throwing $1,000 or $2,500 when they didn't receive $25,000 like they did last year, it might be kind of a meaningless token. And I don't know if we were going to have a larger discussion tomorrow about where does the contract leave the Hope Center in terms of community service or not, and whether we want to revisit whether they should have some grant funds as well to continue the work they do, as perhaps, in my mind, these agencies and missions continue to merge.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that as part of our discussion tomorrow, Rachel, but I am seeing that the Aspen Hope Center is a nonprofit, 501c3. They're going to continue to do their own work, just like all the other nonprofits. And in light of that, they're not getting any from Healthy Community Fund. I may want to even consider giving them a little bit more, but we've got that sort of spread out. So.
Well, and if the board wants to, we can look at bringing this. I think we have a structure. We can always bring this back during open discussion tomorrow, which would be at the end of the day too, when you have some more clarity on this issue.
I agree with George, though.
Okay,
as far
and
as
that's
that,
fine too. Yeah.
Because I guess I'm a little confused about the dollars going to Mine Springs and Mountain Family, given that we're just going to probably approve a contract with them tomorrow.
Well, I was looking at it as towards their capital
Their
construction
capital
fund.
Yeah.
For the conversion of that space in Stubbies. They're just beginning to kick off their capital construction fundraising. And so
So
then they're operating.
both Mine Springs and Mountain Family Health, and I can understand the confusion because we've talked about both, but they're separate issues. There's a capital fundraising component that's going on for the West Springs Hospital through Mine Springs. That's separate from the conversation we're having tomorrow, which is really a community cooperative really got together to pool funding and to try and be more purposeful in how we fund services, mental health services, so both crisis and therapy services and case management services in the community. So it's more on that operating side, George. And what we're talking about tomorrow is really a fiscal agent agreement. It's not so much the contract and such as after those entities had made a selection, then somebody had to, one of the entities needed to step up to be fiscal agent.
No, I understand that, but
contract. So that the capital campaigns for the West Springs Hospital and for the remodel of the facility at 123 Emma Road aren't included in
so
the
capital campaign for the hospital in Grand Junction.
Correct.
And we've already given them $50,000.
We've committed to that.
So
yeah.
I would rather take that $1,000 and put that into the Hope Center, frankly.
The extra $1,000?
Yeah, I think it would be more meaningful for the Hope Center than $1,000 to the hospital. We've already given $50,000 to. I'd rather see that go locally.
And then, so how much are you saying total then for Mines or Hope Center?
Well, I would just I'd put that $1,000 in to the Hope Center, the homeless shelter, and the food bank, and just split it 3 ways.
Yep. I can't do that math that quickly, but
That just seemed to leave out the vets that we talked about.
No.
No.
I'm just taking the $1,000 that we talked about for Mine Springs, and put that back into the three remaining, which we're going to go to Hope Center, homeless shelter, and the food bank.
So we'd still do 1,000 to the veterans, 1,000 to Mountain Family, and then the rest of the money would be split 3 ways.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, we would have $1,000 to the veterans, the winter games piece. We would have $1,000 to Mountain Family Health. Then we'd have
the capital fund.
To the capital fund for the 123 Emma Road. We'd have $1,833 to the homeless shelter, $1,833 to food bank, and then $2,833 to the.
I was just put it all together and then divide it 3 ways.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
take
6,500
85
by 3.
75,
So $2,166 then going to the Hope Center, the homeless shelter, and the food
That's
bank.
what I would suggest.
Got it.
And then as far as Mine Springs, I thought sometime after this year, we were going to see how they were doing and come back to see if there's any other funds we wanted to contribute to their fundraiser, to their capital.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah. I like that.
Unless something comes up tomorrow we haven't heard about yet. So.
Last question, John, you're more up to speed on what's happening with Mountain Family and how they're doing as they move forward with their campaign. Is it $1,000? Should they be an equal partner with the other 3 in this, or is $1,000 as a token to them? Hopefully, just to generate some attention for them.
I think it shows, even greater commitment from the county, which I think can be leveraged as they're having their fundraising discussions. I think the county has already made
stepping up early on
significant commitment. So I think everything is going to be appreciated towards that effort.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thanks.
Sounds good. That was easy.
Good.
Okay.
Let's see, the BOCC meeting calendar discussion.
Yeah, I want to make sure I capture that last discussion before I move on to the next one. Sorry, George.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
We could put some into Bitcoin.
Yeah, so what we wanted to run before you is that we've looked at the calendar for next year. Mine is taking a little bit to load up here, but really not a whole lot has changed. We've captured the holidays that are already part of our policy on there. In February, we did capture the board retreat on the 6th and 7th, so those won't be, that won't be a regular work session day in February. Where you do start to see some changes, as we have every year, we've just tried to anticipate them a little bit more this year, is November and December. On the November calendar, you'll see regular meetings compressed into the 7th and 14th. That's because we really have canceled for Thanksgiving every year. And so we didn't want to run into that. And CCI, we anticipate will be the 26th, 27th, and 28th. And we typically have a difficult time getting a quorum, or at least have 2 commissioners gone. That will mean for some items we'll have to split first readings up a little bit. Similarly, in December, you'll see the regular meetings. We have the regular meeting on the the first Wednesday, second week in December. And then we've moved the regular meeting to Thursday the 20th, and that is to accommodate the certification of mill levies, because we typically do not get those
Or we have to have a special
until the
meeting.
17th, and we end up doing a special meeting. We thought we had just moved the regular meeting ahead of time to that date. So we wanted to get this in front of you and see if you had any questions or issues with it. Otherwise, this is what we will put out to the public as our 2018 meeting and holiday calendar.
Do we have those, I see you have, is that a new one, Rachel?
Yeah.
We have them down at the office?
I mean, that's the one we're discussing today.
Yeah. So this one should be linked, George. You should have it in your board view.
But we have hard copies. Charlotte can pronounce some hard copies.
Oh, yeah, we will, definitely. We wanted to get it approved before we
okay,
could
great.
make sure you guys were okay with it.
Okay, good. Steve?
The only thing that CCI has the summer meeting, which is probably June 4th, 5th, and 6th. So we might consider putting the work session on June 7th instead of on June 5th for that week.
Mm-hmm.
It's it just throws people off when we move our regular meetings from a Wednesday. So, we've never done that in the past. We've always just said we'll have 3 commissioners, and, people can, unless, it means that
So
3 of us can't go, but I think we've
But
always.
then we also have staff there.
It's not a regular
CCI.
meeting week, actually. That one,
Oh.
I think,
Work
is just a
session, at
work
least.
session.
Oh, it's a work session.
It's a work session.
But
Yeah, just a
you
work
tend to have
session.
Nan and John and others there for the County Managers Association discussions and things like that. I'm okay with it either way. You're right,
Yeah.
Patty. Whoever's planning that work session day can know that they'll be missing 2 commissioners, and if it's a really important topic, not to put it on that work session. But it's, and if it ends up light schedule-wise,
Yeah.
once we get a little closer, maybe get canceled all the way.
We've done that before in the
And
past.
that's what we've typically done. And I think that the only reason we didn't really consider the June meeting is our agendas still tend to be a little bit more flexible in June. Once we get to November and December, we're really crunching on budget, and
Everything
our
else.
schedules get very full. And but either way, we could anticipate it and move it, or it's really up to you guys at the end of the day.
And I know we've never moved it before. I think this year was the first time that we actually just canceled. We just canceled the work session this year.
Okay.
So do you guys want to leave it on
Just leave it the way it
Tuesday?
is, and we can always move it if we feel we need to, or cancel it, or whatever.
Okay. Let's see. CCI proxy?
Yeah, and then the last time, we typically do this at our first meeting, but I think without having our first regular meeting is going to come after CCI has asked for this. And what CCI asks for each year is that the board designate proxies in addition to the board designees. The proxies are usually staff members. What we've done in the past is for Health and Human Services, Nan has been the proxy, and then I've been listed as the proxy for all other committees. I don't think in my whole time here you've ever called on me to exercise that proxy role, so it does not come up very often. I think we would recommend the same. The only thing that occurred to me is, we now have a public health department, and so we have both Karen and Nan, and I've noticed at CCI that CalFO has become active at CCI, and I don't know if they're going to be looking at breaking up those committees in the future.
I don't think they are. I mean, CalFO's always, that's the state organization of health directors. I was going to say, it seems to me it's almost always more the human services side is legislative and policy changes and allocation formulas. I mean, health is out there, but seeing how little we've been able to get traction on the health insurance issues with CCI, they're not really all that concerned with general health issues.
I agree. I think the policy issues have generally centered almost entirely on the human services side.
Yeah,
and
so I think we should keep Nan there.
Okay.
Would be good. And
so if the board is supportive of that kind of historical designation of proxy, and again, it's just a proxy if the board representative
Steve and I aren't there to vote.
is not available to do it, we can go ahead and get that filled out and signed by George and into CCI.
The one thing that I was just toss out an idea that perhaps Kara could be the proxy instead of you for the other ones, since she's going to be involved more in legislative issues, and I don't know how that would work for you.
I would let you and Kara decide how to do that.
Whichever,
not
between
us.
you or Kara, either one I'd be comfortable with, whatever feels best for
We'll
you.
have that discussion. I think Kara is tracking the legislative issues. I tend to spend more time with you guys, so may have a more current kind of view of where the board is. So let us talk. It's certainly, like I said, we don't get called on very often, and if at all.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you may be able to put it down as John Peacock, and if John Peacock's not available, then it's
I don't
Kara,
think they give you
so
a
that she
double
could be the
proxy.
alternate.
that's
They
it.
give you one name.
So
I think.
we'll figure that out, and there's
Okay.
But simple.
Okay, open discussion. John, do you have anything?
I don't have anything else.
Steve?
Well, when we were talking about Mountain Family Health, there was a newspaper article today that Mountain Family Health has had to lay off about a whole bunch of people because of cuts in the federal funding that they receive. It was in the Glenwood Post, the article I saw, and it was something like, I don't remember, 12 or 16 staff members that
Yeah, some were vacancies they hadn't refilled, and others they're just letting go.
Yeah.
And that's across their whole system, including Eagle and those areas too.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that's funding that did not get included when they did the continuation bill, that it's funding that we're anticipating will come back with the if and when a budget is approved. But yeah, we have not had that conversation with Mountain Family Health. I do have that on my radar screen to talk to Ross and understand how that both is affecting their ability to provide services, but also how it's affecting their ability to potentially meet their fundraising goals. The board may recall that when we had our lease discussion, we talked a little bit about the uncertainty of federal funding. And so while we went with a lease that had obligated the full program that we hope and intend will come to fruition in Basalt, that we also have Plan B should funding not materialize to continue the operations at the level that we had hoped, that we would do a lease on a smaller portion of the square footage to bring down both the fundraising, the capital costs, but also to more appropriately match what Mountain Family Health is going to be able to utilize for operations. It's, of course, our hope that the federal funding, because the federally qualified health plan funding has had bipartisan support, so we anticipate that it is going to come back, but it is a challenge for them right now. So just a reminder that we had anticipated we may hit some of these bumps in the road in our partnership.
Yeah, it's something, I just brought it up because it's something we need to be aware of and be tuned into that, and just I think maybe be prepared to go to bat to restore the federal funding too.
Yeah. we're keeping an eye on that.
Okay, good, thanks. Anybody else? Open discussion? See none, I guess we're done for the day. Thanks, Grassroots. We're here tomorrow at noon for our regular public
Perfect.
meeting.
Thank you.
Noon tomorrow.
Doctor's appointment. You want the doctor.
You got a doctor right now?
Good.